face frames are now completely finished. I have a whole stack of them over here. I have a few of them I've already put stain on over there drying, but they're all assembled, sanded, the edges are broken, we're all good to go. It's time to put stain on them. Now, in a previous episode, I talked about how we were hoping not to stain these things, but it just didn't work out that way. So right here is kind of the natural gray colors that we really liked in the hackberry. And then you look right next to it, this is from the same piece of wood. It's really, really yellow. Side by side, that and that don't really match. And if we were to just clear coat this, it wouldn't turn out awesome. So what we need to do is stain it with this gray color. I'll show you what it is. Old Masters Aged Oak, if you're curious, but it doesn't really matter because this has been discontinued. In fact, we had to look pretty hard to find an old gallon somewhere so that we could use this. And we only went with this stuff because my in-laws had already committed to going with it on theirs, and we'd seen the results and we really liked it. So I have a test piece here just to show you. That's the natural gray, that's the yellow. This is a pretty yellow board that got stained, and it looks pretty similar. Maybe it's a hair darker than this, but when you cover all of the parts with this, it really levels it all out and looks pretty nice. You can tell if you look real close what's naturally dark versus what's naturally light, but it evens out the color and gives us what we were looking for. So I'm going to finish applying it to all of these, and in just a second here you can see what that color change looks like. There. So that one's ready to just go sit and dry. But if we look at it as closely as we can, we have flooded right here. It's a little bit darker on this stuff than it is up here. But this was a dark piece originally, and that was a light piece originally. At this point, they match a whole lot better than they did before. All right, guys, I don't exactly know where I'm at in this video as far as continuity is concerned. I may have had floors in here that may have been last week or next week. I do know that I have been working on cabinets for quite some time and we didn't quite get them done. I believe the last thing that I actually posted was about building cabinet bodies. I have now built the face frames, and I had to wait a while because I hadn't gotten the clear coat ordered, received, and applied yet. Well, now it's done. So here's what my face frames look like once they're assembled. This is for a 36-inch wide cabinet, and it's 30 inches tall the way it is. So we've got hackberry that is stained with a very light gray stain, and now it's getting mounted to the cabinet bodies. And I'm going to show you the process I've been using to get that done. These boxes, this is the face of it. I've got it up so it's easier to work on this way. These are pretty square, but plywood changes and moves, and it's cheap plywood, so it might have warped a little bit on me. And I do know that these are really nicely square. So what I'm doing is running glue around the outside of this, and starting at the top, I'm flushing it up to the top, and I'm flushing the insides to the inside of the face frame here. And I've got pocket holes going up all the way around the perimeter of it. So I'm lining up the top, clamping it down, and then screwing all the pocket holes in from the top. Then I'm going around here to the bottom and shifting it left and right to make sure that the inside face is flush with the inside of that face frame. And then clamping this down and running those pocket hole screws in. And then it's really held pretty square. And then the only thing there that might not be quite right is this piece, and that piece could have a little bit of a bow in it. So when I get to the sides, I'm either going to push or pull a little bit to keep this seam flush to the inside edge the whole way. That way, I'll get to that later, but let's start running some glue. I'm also trying to keep the glue favoring the outside edge of this plywood, so that when there's squeeze out, I'm hoping it doesn't make it to the inside edge, because that inside you might actually see. So I'm trying to be pretty neat with the glue and very deliberate about where it goes. Then I just take my finger and kind of smear it out. And my wet, I guess this rag is an old sock. Just smear out the glue. This ended up being way more glue than I usually get. That bottle's kind of falling apart on me. Drag that out. So like I said, this is clear coated now. This is finished. This is done. I set that on there so it's flush to the side I'm on and flush in here. And then just clamp it so it can't move while I get started. So a great big clamp going all the way to the bottom of the cabinet, which I guess is technically the back of the cabinet. Clamp. I just like to make sure that I get my first lines really, really right. So we're flush there. Yep, flush there and flush there. And I'm pretty happy with that. And then I'm going to push flush there. And the whole pattern is the same. What you can see there on the bottom is what I'm looking at over here on this end. Rub whatever glue I've got off of there. And now just to be sure, on this one that's thicker so it's not that big of a deal, but here on these sides with this 1/2 inch stuff, I'm pre-drilling just a little bit just to make sure that that hackberry can't split. And I'm really only running that in 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. Not very far. And then I take a whole bunch of screws and start running those in. And I did want to point out a new tool here real quick. Craig has come out, Craig Tools of Pocket Hole fame, came out with their own line of cordless power tools. And they've got a lot of neat features in them. I've got a few of them here to try out. And in this case, I'm using their impact wrench. And what they did that's kind of interesting is that they've got a 3-speed built into it. And then the 4th speed is actually like automatic or sensory, or I would call it like a clutch mode. So right now I'm going to just hold the trigger and go till it stops. Oh, except that I'm on the wrong mode. That was a bad idea. Now we're in automatic mode. I could have driven that right through, which is the whole point of the clutch mode. If you have an impact and you're not paying attention, you could drive that pocket hole screw all the way through the face of this without knowing what you're doing. Now I've got it in automatic mode, and I'm going to hold the trigger till it stops. And it just goes, yep, that seems like that's tight enough. I don't want to keep driving anymore. There, it's just stopped on me, and I can pull it again, and it'll stop again. But that way you can be sure you're not going to blast it right through your face frame. And, if you're really good, if you're really subtle with your trigger finger, you can probably pull that off with a regular impact. But kind of knowing that you can't drive it through there unless you just really do a bad job, it's kind of nice peace of mind. Anyway, the top is done. So now I take my clamps to the other side. And I'm pulling the corner of the face frame this way just a little bit to get it to flush up. And then clamp it down. Oh, I leaned into some glue here. Hooray. And then I can just feel here those match for what tiny, insignificant amount of lip might be there. And then clamp that down. And that's really the whole thing. After clamping it down, I'm confident that the box and the face frame are now square with each other. And I can just start running in more holes or running in more screws. I'm still pre-drilling just a little bit, just to be sure I don't split something that I don't want to, which I guess is everything. Do you ever want to split anything? That's probably not the case. There. Hear how it stops all on its own? Now you'll be able to see it. I'm going to pull the trigger and just hammer it in. And it stopped. Give it a little bit more and then I'm really happy. Dough. So I've got these clamps on the corners and I've got 2 holes really close together, so I'm confident these aren't moving on me at all. But because, if you watch right here, I can flex that kind of a lot. And with a screw at an angle, tightening it up, it will try to pull its way in like that. So I will actually grab these and clamp this down to keep, it'd be easier if I use both hands the right way, to keep this flush while I do the rest of the screws. That way it doesn't pull itself out of alignment. So now 1, 2, 3 holes are lined up and they're held in place with those clamps so they can't move when I run in these next 3. So 1, 2, 3. And those ones I can see that seam is pulled really, really tight, mostly because of the clamps. But that way, I don't have to even give it that second pull of the trigger. I know that that's nice and tight and that's never going anywhere. With the glue and those 5 or 6 screws on each face, we're in great shape. So I'm feeling the inside and it's flush here. There we go. And it was pulled out. This center was pulled towards me just a little bit. Now it's nice and flush. But because that seems like it naturally wants to move, I'm going to throw a clamp on there to keep it from doing that again. We'll do these last 3 here. So this is actually the first time I've ever used pocket holes and pocket hole screws to attach a face frame. In every other face frame cabinet I've ever made, I'd put the glue on the same way, put the face frame in place. I may even clamp it to keep it from moving, but then I'd go around it with brad nails and nail it in from the front, which is way easier than this, if I'm being perfectly honest. But what it isn't is cleaner. You end up with that little dimple, that little hash mark from every place that brad nailer struck down around the face frame of this, and you should probably clean it. Well, this, I feel like, is getting me more accurate results, and then it's keeping that face completely free of imperfections, and I don't have to deal with filling those holes later. So 1 more clamp, 3 more screws is enough, right? I'm not going to drop any this time. That's not true. I didn't drop any this time. There. Cabinet complete. I'll grab my rag, make sure that all my squeeze out's clean. Look at here, we squeezed back out again. This is why I try to favor that outside edge, so we don't have to do so much of this. But we're good the rest of the way around. Now I need to get this out of the way. And I've been doing this on top of one of my smaller cabinets because it's a little bit lower than my workbench, and that just makes it easier to get to and work on. There. Look at how nice that seam is. It's not like these will get stacked like that, but that shows me that this and this are pretty straight, pretty parallel, pretty nice if I can make that gap close up that well. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and there's a 4th cabinet exactly this size. This is going to be the same sized cabinet, but rather than getting the face frame with the extra horizontal lines for the drawers, this one is for the sink. So it just goes with a big opening because this will have doors. And then the difference between this and that is that this is actually 3/4 of an inch wider. And I will flush it to the outside of the face frame this time instead of the inside.